Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to talk about adding an additional warehouse
in Cleveland, Ohio. So for those of you who've been following along, you may recall that Cleveland is where Microcosm started.
Longtime fans of the program will know that like the back of their hand. Though I do still talk to friends of mine who forget that routinely.
But we are going back to roots, reinvesting in Microcosm's original community, hiring one of Microcosm's original volunteers.
And, you know, it's a good geographic place for proximity shipping times to places that we cannot easily get to from Portland, Oregon. And partly it is a very economical place, and partly it's, you know, the right thing to support the people that have supported us for a very long time. And I mean, I will say also, we still get quite a few orders from there. So
Northeast Ohio representing.
Yeah. So that's been neat to see.
And it's also like a lot of the places we first thought about looking were more rural or in smaller cities, and Cleveland is a major city. Like, you can easily get there by train, by airplane, by truck. It's, we know people there we can stay with when we visit, at least after COVID. It made sense.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like just a logistical fit, and it's easy to get in and out of, which a lot of places are not. And yeah, we were looking at a place in Scappoose, Oregon. And there is a surprising lack of places in Scappoose, Oregon. Also, the cost difference is like getting a 90% discount, which, is a little, Portland industrial real estate has been tapped out for quite a few years now. I want to say at least since we moved into this building, probably longer. And so part of it is that, we just needed more space, we needed more opportunity, and like, if we're going to have another year like 2020 where growth is just constant and massive, then we're going to need somewhere to put all that stuff. We're going to need a place where people can socially distance while they pack orders and receive shipments and, do all the work of a publishing house.
So are we going to basically like how is the division of labor going to work between Cleveland and Portland?
Well, the Mississippi River I'm thinking of as the official dividing line, and that we will ship orders west of the Mississippi from Portland and orders east of the Mississippi from Cleveland. And partly, you don't really want to think of the country in terms of geographic distances so much as like metropolitan and population areas, because obviously we get a lot more orders from Illinois than we do from Mississippi, and it's not because people in Illinois are like culturally miles ahead or anything. It's because there's just that many more people there.
Makes sense.
And so that is also true of like New England, and even those really tiny states, they have people in them.
I'm also excited because our books print in Illinois, and now instead of those books taking 2 to 4 weeks to make their way across the country to Portland, only for us to ship like half of them back east, they can travel much less.
And so, yeah, they should theoretically arrive the next day or the day after in that warehouse. And that warehouse has a dock, which we have not had ever before.
Yes.
Where that means literally the truck backs up, the truck takes the pallet jack, rolls the pallet off the truck, and the books are in the warehouse. There's no like taking the books off the truck. It's just literally like a 2 surfaces lining up.
None of that, like, blocking traffic on our residential street while the lift gate goes up and down 11 times.
Or the driver refuses to park on our street and insists moving everything a block into our driveway.
There's so much that can happen with...
Yeah.
Yes.
And so part of it, too, is that, you know, it's just not sustainable to bottleneck ourselves in the way we have, you know. And when, as I have said many times, you really want to, you know, if people want books, you don't want to create impediments to that. And if people want your books, even better.
Can we talk a little about the warehouse itself and, like, how we found it and how we chose it and what it looks like and how cute it is? And I know you're not supposed to think of a warehouse as cute, but this one's pretty cute.
You know, we used Google, like anybody else, to really establish neighborhoods and, like, availability and, you know, what kind of industrial stock is there and what the condition is. And it looked like there was a lot of things in essentially, like, bare bones condition. And even by a lot, I don't really mean that many. I mean, there was maybe a dozen, you know, that were, like, good shells of buildings that needed new windows, needed, you know, new bathrooms, needed
a roof,
new office space, you know, new roofs. Yeah, that's a pretty constant thing. And, you know, and then there's a lot of places that are in, like, pretty dicey neighborhoods on top of that. And obviously there's more availability there. And there's also, you know, like, Cleveland suffers a lot of the problems of, you know, just segregation and opportunity, you know, is offered in some places and not offered in other places. So if you went to a wealthy area, I mean, you would spend as much as you would in Portland, almost, on a warehouse, you know. And so, you know, there's sort of the middle ground that's available there. And Cleveland is, like, a very weird shape, you know. It has, like, sort of a...
extreme gerrymandering.
Yeah, you might say. And so we kept looking at places, and then they would get snatched up by the time we'd be like, oh yeah, that could work. And then I created a alert in my email, and we hired a realtor to help. And the realtor sent a bunch of things, and, you know, none of them were in good condition or really all that great, honestly. And, you know, but we were, like, working through looking at them, and we found one that was, like, workable, like, not in a great place, not a great price, but it would have serviced all the needs, and it was move-in ready, which a lot of the places were not. And, like, the other thing, you know, you really have to, like, raise your eyebrows a little bit is when you're getting a property listing and it has 0 photos of the interior of the building. Like, you more or less know that it's bad, but you don't know in what way it's bad or how bad. Like, you don't know if you need to knock it over or what. And so, you know, one day I come to work and I get my alert, and there's, like, a beautiful building that's a little too beautiful. And it's in a neighborhood where, you know, it's safe, it's reasonably near things in a relative sense, and it yeah, it has, like, new roof, new offices, it has a loading dock, it has it's a little smaller than we would have gone for and we had been looking for, but in every other way it was a little too perfect. And it was very economical, like almost too cheap. So, you know, very much the first questions were, what's wrong with it? And so we sent our person on the ground out to look at it. And, you know, came back, and I believe the exact quote was, it's as clean as the bathrooms at the Gundarino, which I believe was the review. Longtime Clevelanders will understand that reference. And
I don't know if that means it was filthy or spotless.
We'll just leave it at that. And then the more we dug and dug, it was like, you know, we hired an inspector, and the inspector was like, there is nothing wrong with this place. And, you know, inspectors don't really say that.
Yeah, that's unprecedented.
Yeah. And so, you know, then that was more or less how we knew that place was right. And then we hired surveyors to make sure there was enough room for us to add additional buildings on site. And then we talked to the planning and zoning departments to make sure that that was not going to be like a severely monkey-wrenched process for us later when we need to do that. And once we figured out that was like actually pretty relatively easy and straightforward, you know, then we were like, okay, we should do this. Like, this is very functional. And, you know, because that's sort of when you're all the way over here, you don't want your person on the ground to dread going to work, or you don't want them to like have a bad situation and then have bad feelings about going to work, you know, or, you know, because it's like a person that works that place needs to be highly reliable, because, you know, you're not looking over their shoulder, you need to have a strong base of morale as you bring in more and more and more people, you know. So that was how that came to be. And then,
and someday we'll actually get to go visit it and see our warehouse.
I know, yeah, because originally we had tickets to go to Winter Institute in February, and we were like, okay, well, that got canceled, so we'll just go to Cleveland instead.
Yeah, I know.
And then Cleveland is like 7 times worse than Portland per capita for COVID, and so we were like, well, I guess we won't do that.
But maybe by the end of 2021.
Right, yeah.
Could happen. So
that's been, you know, it is a little bit of a bummer not to get to play with the new toy, but soon enough.
Shall we see if it's still recording?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it is, until next week. Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.